everyone, and welcome to the first video on our channel. I'm JB and next to me is Moose. Today we thought we would talk about the season so far, so where our expectations were, what they met, and probably move on to how we think the season might start again, hopefully. So Max, let's go to you.
Yes, I think the season so far has been interesting. Obviously, it's a weird time at the moment. I really think it's had its ups and downs. I think we've not had the perfect start being able to compete with the likes of Liverpool and City, which I didn't ever expect to, but we always, Chelsea's fans, look to sort of aim for that top spot no matter what. And I've been really surprised. I mean, if I'm going to be completely honest here, I wasn't expecting much from this season. It was one of those ones where, you know, with Lamps coming back in, I wasn't, as much as I wanted it to work, I wasn't 100% certain it was. And I don't know about you, I think I wasn't expecting it to be as well as it has. And I think it's been a long time coming on the ethos he's implementing into the team, because having the youth coming in, seeing the likes of Tammy and Mason Mount and sort of Tamori at the back, I mean, that's sort of stuff we've not seen for years. Sort of, as much as I love the Mourinho days, Mourinho always trusted sort of big signings and experience in the squad, which did us really well. But it's always been one of those things a Chelsea fan has looked at Tottenham or a Liverpool where they've brought in their youth, and we've never had that. We've always been that sort of, we've been the club that's watched great youth come through us, be loaned out, and maybe sold them on. So you look at the likes of De Bruyne, Lukaku, Salah, and you're always going, that could have been our squad. And I feel like it's been the first season that it's been our squad. And I really just wasn't expecting it. I mean, as much as sort of at the beginning of the season, we were having chats and we were going, I saw Mason Mount and I can see him becoming a great player. It's just whether we were going to be that sort of club to trust them. And I'm really glad we have. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the season, I mean, I didn't expect top four, to be honest. I thought, you know, maybe like a fifth or a sixth or something like that. Just a season to give those players a bit of experience in the Premier League and something to build on for the future. Look maybe to the season after, or even the one following that, to try and get top four. And then following that, you could then start to look for a title push. But considering we're in fourth now, I mean, before fixtures stopped, it was looking like, you know, we might get caught. We wasn't at the top of our game. I mean, the last game before fixtures stopped, we did a job over Everton. Brilliant game, brilliant result, fantastic performance. So, you know, we might have started to build up again from there. But it's a real opportunity for us to get fourth in that first season. And that'll be, you know, these youngsters would then have 2 years of not only Premier League experience, but Champions League experience, which will just be an absolute, you know, that would just be fantastic for the future. They're going to have experience at the top level, and you can't really beat that, can you?
You touched on that point there, because I think personally I was really worried as a fan, like excited up until December, where we were sort of we were on the heels of Leicester, and Leicester were really, I mean, Leicester have been an amazing club this season. Liverpool and City for the last couple of seasons have dominated football. But for me, when I was looking at it, there was that slight worry that the depth of squad that we've built wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. So, like, we didn't have a backup striker if Tammy got injured. Giroud comes on, but he's not someone who can play 90 minutes and excel like we've seen everywhere else. Our back sort of four have been shaky at best this season, and rotating, that we've not had that solid sort of person who's that bedrock of the back four yet. I think Rudiger coming in is brilliant, but he picked up a few injuries. And I think getting to December, it was that, will they last the season? Will they have that sort of legs? So I mean, sort of, horrible what's happened, but I think sort of having that break's given the young squad a bit of breathing space, because I think they could go on and I think sort of we could even challenge for third, but I'd be more than happy at fourth at the end of the season with this. But for me, it was that worry, and I thought it was proper kudos to Lamps not investing in January. He built a great squad of players that could have been disrupted by bringing in a world-class player to sort of play, to sort of compete. And it would have been really harsh on them, especially when you've got other players coming back, like Ruben. He'd absolutely dominate that midfield coming back in, and he needs that sort of exposure coming back in. I don't want to go and buy someone else to replace him as well, because he's another player that should be that week in, week out playing for us. But I think sort of we needed that little bit of break, a little bit of breathing space, just to sort of make sure there wasn't burnout with a lot of those young players, because they've got the fire, which not a lot of our players have had previous years, where they're not really playing for the club, they're just playing for Chelsea. And I feel like you've got Mason, who's been here since, what is it, 8, 9?
Yeah, it's about 8, I think.
Tammy's been here, he's come up through the ranks. You've got these players who've built great relationships together, who are playing Premier League football now. And they'd been a real risk if we'd brought in a different manager, that they wouldn't.
And they've all won stuff together as well. Like all the youth competitions you can imagine, they've all gone through. They've won. We've won the FA Cup at youth level for probably like 8 times in the last 10 years, something along those lines. And we've just dominated at youth level. So for us to not be giving them chances in the first team was just crazy. So I think finally, whilst we're not challenging for titles at the moment, you put that team together in a couple of years' time and it's going to be phenomenal.
I think we've definitely got the makings of probably one of the best Premier League clubs going forward. I think sort of, if you look at how the Premier League's gone for the last couple of seasons, you look at how Liverpool have done it. I mean, sort of credit to Jurgen Klopp, and as much as I hate Liverpool, you've got to give him a little bit of credit, that the fact that he has built an amazing strategy. He's invested in a core of a club, recognised his weaknesses, brought those new players in, and invested in youth. You've got Trent Alexander, you've got some of the other youth players at Liverpool brilliantly coming through, and they're having that prime at the moment. I don't think it's sustainable for us as a club to just keep buying huge talent in and then just expecting them to be moulded together. Because
I think what you have to do is you have to bring in those youth players and then make the signings around those players. So where you haven't got the youth coming through in a certain position, you have to go and fill that position. But if you have an academy that can fill the majority of your team, then you don't have to go out spending hundreds of millions on marquee players all over the pitch. You can do what Liverpool did and bring in that Alisson and Van Dijk. And that pretty much solved it for them. They obviously they brought in Mane and Salah and Firmino, but they weren't massive, big money signings. They were signings that they'd made previously, and they just had a couple more gaps to fill, and they were done. And now they're just adding, a few squad players in here and there to improve, but they're not having to go out and spend 100 million on a player because they don't need to. They've got a squad already there that is, dominated the league this year.
Yeah. And you look at us, we've had, our academy has been the envy of most sort of clubs worldwide for a number of years. I mean, the fact that we've loaned out a huge sort of quantity of those players has been probably to our detriment. I mean, I mentioned 3 players at the beginning of the podcasters. You've got De Bruyne, Lukaku and Salah, probably 3 of the best players at the moment. Lukaku, we'll give it a little bit, but they are 3 world-class players that come through our academy. And it may sort of, I won't sort of do misjustice to any of the managers that we've had, because I think we've had some amazing managers over the years, and they've all had sort of applied their own sort of tactics and the way in which they've managed Chelsea. But if you look at that talent, it's sort of, as a Chelsea fan, you're watching Liverpool having Salah sort of run teams ragged every week, or you've got De Bruyne at City, who is, in my eyes, one of the best sort of playmakers that there is around. And Lukaku, he's been hit and miss, but sort of he was one of those players that, as a Chelsea fan, you thought he could be another Drogba. He could be that
another Costa.
that player that we've moulded up front for so long, and it was just such a shame to see him go. To see him go to sort of Everton and then sort of United, and it's one of those things you go, I wanted to see that player and give him a chance. We're not massive on giving players chances at the moment, and I think this year has been a breath of fresh air to sort of walk into sort of your mates having a beer at the pub, and you're not talking around sort of Chelsea of the old of just signing big sort of marquee sort of players. You're talking around, right, we've got that youth. We're building for the future in a era that Abramovich might not be there, that we're becoming self-sustaining, bringing through academy players and being sensible with when we spend money. That's, I mean, everyone sort of gives Chelsea a hard time, but this is sort of a great time to be a Chelsea fan, be able to sort of
enjoy it.
Enjoy sort of, not necessarily sort of, we're not going straight for the number one at the moment, but I reckon sort of 2-3 years we're going to be dominating sort of world football again. You'll be challenging for Champions League, Premier League, all of the sort of the major trophies, with building around that youth, because they're only going to get better. And there's plenty more sort of other players that we could have and bring through. You look at Izzy Brown and other players where there are some great youth who could join that core. But equally, as you said, there are massive gaps. We need some of those signings. I think the keeper situation's been an issue this season. It's probably been an issue for the last couple of seasons. In my eyes, I think he's an amazing talent. I just don't know if he's got...
Very raw.
Yeah, I think he's got a great arrogance, which you need with a sort of goalkeeper. You need that great emotional stability. But I think sort of I lost a lot of faith in him when he decided not to come off. As much as you don't agree with any decision and all that sort of stuff, that was one thing you couldn't do in my eyes. But I think the issue is I don't see a lot of goalkeepers in the market for us to go and sign.
No, there's not really a standout talent out there, that's not at a big club already. I think, if you're going to go out and spend big money on the keeper, maybe Donnarumma would be the only one I would look at and say, do you know what, he's like 19, he's already been playing at a top level for a number of years. He could potentially fill that gap. I don't think we've really got any youngsters coming through in that position that could fill that gap. But at the same time, give Kepa more time. Look at De Gea when he first came to the Premier League. He wasn't the finished article. He was very weak from crosses. He had a lot of issues with his game, but he became what people viewed for a while anyway as one of the best keepers in the world. I mean, he's still got a mistake in him, but if Kepa carries on playing at the top level, he can only improve. Whether he gets to the level where he's one of the best in the world, only time will tell that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do stick with him. When you've spent that much money in the goalkeeper, and let's be honest, we'd never get that money back for him at this point in time, and not even close.
Who else is really going to come in for the market for him? Because I think sort of Barca and Real have both got solid keepers. No one's really searching, like a couple of seasons ago when it was sort of either Courtois or De Gea who was going to head over back to Spain. There was a market for those sorts of goalkeepers, and there was sort of a lot of potential merry-go-rounds around that. I mean, we are definitely in the market for a keeper this season, no matter what, whether we're going to buy a next first-team keeper or we're going to buy a backup to Kepa.
Yeah, I think Willie's out of contract, isn't he?
So Willie's not there. I haven't seen a great sort of amount in our youth team, and I think it's really harsh to sort of talk around youth goalkeepers because you need experience around that. There's not many goalkeepers who walk in at 20, 21, 22, 23 who can walk into a Premier League side, because you need experience. You need to be playing to sort of understand that. You've seen the likes of Pickford and Butland over years, but they've never reached the heights in what should be their peak of their career. They've got a mistake in them and stuff like that. But I mean, personally, if I was looking to buy someone this season, I'd probably look for someone like Nick Pope. Whether Burnley want to sell him is another thing. But a player like that, a solid pair of hands, he's not going to be the mould that Frank's probably looking for, that can play out from the back. But he is definitely a solid pair of hands that creates that stability between the two posts. And if you're not going to play Kepa, I'd be more than happy to have him in.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. He might not be our first choice, but he's a first choice that I wouldn't. Calabera, Willie always had an issue. Sort of, you put him in front of a penalty, he's going to save it. But you put him in the game, there's a mistake somewhere, as we saw at the World Cup. But yeah, that's a position that I really want to get fixed. It'll be interesting to understand how Frank goes to that, because it looks like they've had sort of arguments at some point, because otherwise he would have played.
I don't know. I think it's just a case of Lampard plays on form. I think he looks at who's playing, who's doing the job, and I think Kepa wasn't. He was letting in a lot of sloppy chances, and he wasn't playing at his best. And I genuinely believe he was just trying to give Kepa a wake-up call and say, look, you need to buck your ideas up, you need to improve. And as soon as he improved, he was back in the team. And I think he's the first game back, I can't remember now which game it was, but I remember he had a blinder. He was brilliant. And it obviously did the trick, Obviously, we didn't get to see the full fruits of it because the season being cut short already. But I think that worked. But going back to what we were talking about before, when Lampard was announced, obviously we all heard the rumours and we all kind of knew it was going to happen. But what was your thoughts on that? Not as a Chelsea fan, watching Lampard for so many years, loving the guy, but as a manager, what was your thoughts? 1 year experience as a manager for Derby in the Championship, to then jump to one of the top Premier League teams. Yeah. Big jump. What did you think about that in that sense?
It was a worry, to be honest. So Lampard, for me, idol. He's my Chelsea legend. He's one of those heroes that you don't want to meet, just in case it sort of ruins the idea of what he is for you. For what he did to the club, I mean, me growing up, he was that player. He was that midfielder that you sort of built what you thought that attacking midfielder should look like round. And seeing him score goals, seeing him be sort of vice captain and captain, that's who I sort of grew up to aspire to. And I worried because it was the returning sort of hero. And without that experience, I mean, give him his credit, he did an amazing job at Derby last season. I think sort of everyone was sort of focusing on how well Gerrard was doing for Rangers, and they knew that sort of Lampard was doing stuff, and people couldn't quite put their finger on it. Was sort of he being in a great sort of experience because he was given all these Chelsea youngsters to help sort of improve his squad. But sort of looking back on it, it was a bit of a masterclass. But my first thought was, I'm worried because this is a one chance thing. If we didn't sort of lose, we didn't lose the sort of the manager at the time, I don't think we would have hired him this early. It was almost sort of, he could have done 2-3 seasons at Derby, improved his game, matured it, and then brought him in. But it was almost sort of, we had a point in time, we need a new manager. We didn't want to go and spend big bucks on a new manager. But we brought him back in, and I was worried that we brought him in too early, that would ruin his chances going forward. Like, it's too early, baptism of fire. I mean, you look at the first game, 4-0 loss to Wally, and the actual sort of, we were getting slammed by every manager, and it was one of those things like, yeah, we fucked up here. And
the thing is that we didn't actually play that badly, I don't think, in that game. That was the thing. Like, I was watching it and I was thinking, do you know what? We actually look quite good. That we're playing good football. Things are going well. And then, gave away the penalty. That was just one of those things. what it was a penalty. And then after that, we were going for it. We thought, right, we need to get a goal back here. And then they were just counter-attacking us every time. And that's, what, if in a big game like that, if you concede the first goal, then that kind of thing happens. So I think a lot of the pundits and stuff like that, they were very quick to react. And, this Lampard thing is not going to work for Chelsea, blah, blah, blah. But it has, it's clearly been positive. I mean, when he first came in for me, I was thinking like, yeah, as I said at the beginning, I didn't expect much. I was thinking, okay, I knew he was a smart guy. Like he's a very intelligent man. So to me, that suggests that he's got a good chance of becoming a good manager. It doesn't necessarily guarantee it, but I thought, he knows football and he's an intelligent guy. He had a good first season at Derby. So, okay, let's give it a try. And I knew from the very beginning that he was going to look to the youth, because obviously we had the transfer ban, so he couldn't sign players. The squad that we had wasn't, it still had some great players. You still had your Williams and your Jorginhos and your Kantes, but it wasn't a title-winning team. So I think everyone knew it was a rebuild season. So to be currently in the top four now is just like, it just blows my mind how well we've done, and I did not expect it at all. So I think anyone who doubted Lampard's abilities should be taking it back and eating their words now, because he has done a fantastic job. Even if we finish fifth, he's done a brilliant job.
You look at where we started. I mean, everything was stacked against him. As you say, the transfer ban. You've been given a club like Chelsea, and you're not able to spend because you're coming into a new club. It's effectively, as every manager sort of comes through, it's get rid of what you don't want and build into your new mould of what you've got. And he effectively was given the same slate as we had last year. As you say, not title-winning players, but a solid sort of foundation, but no ability to chop and change bits and pieces that you want. Potentially get rid of some of the older players, bring in some newer players. But actually, I think that was a fresh breath. Like, gave them an opportunity to sort of, the pressure was slightly off when that happened, because all Chelsea fans went, there's no way sort of he's going to win the league with this. So let's lower our expectations a little bit. Even though we always go in again, we could still win the league. We're not necessarily going to win the league. And then what we've got to do is we'll rebuild this season. He can replicate what he's done at Derby. And he is a returning hero. But there was still that worry that I just didn't want too many people to put pressure on him. Like, expect too much from effectively with his hands tied. And to see where he's turned the whole club around, absolutely amazing. Like, changed the ethos, sort of recognising talent that he was playing with last year. I mean, Tomori and Mason Mount playing with him were absolute revelations to walk into our squad. Like, Mason Mount, he's almost a carbon copy. He's obviously been coaching him very closely because he is that second coming of Lampard. Mm-hmm. He's got that energy. He wants to play. He wants to prove that he hasn't sort of made a mistake by coming to Chelsea and playing in their academy, and he wants to play first team. He trusted bringing Tammy back in. Tammy had an amazing season in Championship last year, but as we rightly know, that doesn't promise you a great season in Premier League. He's had poor seasons at Swansea before, and it's one of those ones where it was still a risk. And I'm so glad he did, because he was like a new striker.
It was, it was great to have Tammy.
He's like a young Adebayor. It's like that player you want up front.
Just awkward, isn't he? If you look at it from a defender, you wouldn't want to play against Tammy, because maybe he's not the best in the air, he's not the quickest, but he's good at both areas. He's good at everything. He's not amazing at everything, but he's good at everything. So he could kind of, in any situation, he could have a few options of what he does, and you're not going to be able to guess as a defender how to deal with that. So he's a bit of a, he is a dark horse to be a top striker. I think we do need a better backup for him, because obviously he got very tired because we didn't have the options there. Obviously Giroud did well when he came in, but Lampard, I don't think, fancied him to start with the way we
Do you reckon
play.
we're going to renew Drew's contract? Because there's a bit of...
No.
He's one of those players that is currently on that... whether they'll stay. So you've probably got 4 or 5 players this season that might contract. The biggest loss is probably going to be William. I can't quite see what's happened behind the scenes, but he's been he's been amazing for the last couple of seasons. He's always delivered. He is getting on. He's not a young sort of thing, but he's not past his prime yet.
Mm.
Whereas you could probably say that of Pedro. Pedro is past his prime.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't. He's been a great since he's joined, but I wouldn't be disappointed if he left this season. Let him go and join. I think he's either looking at Japan or the MLS. Let him go and have the rest of his career there. Williams still got 2 or 3 years in him, maybe 1 or 2 of good quality. And I really think we're going to miss that. And I'm really gutted if he goes to one of the other London clubs.
I think I'm ready for him to leave, and that's mainly based on the fact that look at who we're going to have next season. Like, ignore any possible transfers, but you just look at, we're going to have Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi, and Ziyech. So if we're not playing a number 10, say we're playing 4-3-3, you're going to have to pick 2 out of those 3. So that's going to be difficult, like to even out of those 3, ignoring Willian, ignoring potential incomings of someone like Sancho. That's going to be a difficult team to pick. He's going to have so many young, good options that Willian, if I was picking a team as my personal preference, he would be 4th out of that so far. Yeah,
and to be honest, it's one of those things that I can probably see that Lampard's given him the idea that he's not going to start as much next season.
Absolutely, yeah.
You look at that talent, he is going to become backup. And that's probably become the challenge of why he's going to say he's going to leave. He could probably walk into an Arsenal and walk straight into their first team and play week in, week out, because Arsenal, in quite honesty, are picking poor players. They are buying the scraps or the players that are moonlighting their careers at the likes of Chelsea with David Luiz. Everyone thought that was a masterclass in buying him in. To be honest, I couldn't wait to get rid of him. I thought he's had some brilliant years with us, but he's got too many mistakes in him. He's not a player that you could trust in that sort of position.
No.
William, I could trust, but I think you're going to struggle to have him week in, week out delivering. It would just be heartbreaking.
Yeah, even last year or so, I think he's been a big player for us, but he's not been the most consistent. Like he'll maybe have a game where he just doesn't show up. You don't really mention his name too many times. He doesn't create so much. And that last season that was okay because we had a little guy called Eden Hazard who would pick up everyone else's slack. But this year we haven't had that. And Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi have been injured. They've been in and out of the team because of injury. So Willian has been that player that we've had to rely on. But when he doesn't turn up, then look at the Newcastle game.
Yeah.
If he doesn't turn up, then we don't create anything. And go back to last season, that would have been Hazard. That would have been the perfect game for Hazard. He would have plucked it from nothing and created something. Like I remember watching the West Ham game at Stamford Bridge last year. Nothing happening. We weren't really playing very well. Hazard picks up the ball, takes on about half their team, and puts it in the bottom corner. And we won. I think we won that game 2-0 in the end. And that was, we have missed that this season. But at the same time, I think we've got some players there that if you give them a chance into next season, they're going to make that happen. They're going to be those players. And we're going to have multiple of them, which is so exciting to think about.
Yeah, and that is a great point. If you think around it, it's another thing that was sort of weighted against him this season, and losing our best player by far over the last couple of campaigns. Hazard, as much as he could sort of switch on and switch off how good he was, when he switched it on, unplayable. And we lost that this season. Which actually another thing sort of is seen as a negative, but I think it's a positive because it's asked everyone else to step up, and it's asked youthful players that wouldn't have been able to sort of no one's going to overtake Hazard. He's one of those players that's the first on the team sheet every week that can actually compete for that sort of position nowadays. You wouldn't necessarily put a Hudson-Odoi or Pulisic as a first-team starter. They're going to compete for that position week in, week out. I think that's been really interesting. I think it's given us a lot of drive. I think whereas pundits were sort of using that as a really thing to sort of push us down on, Frank's been able to sort of channel that into some really good building a team around it. I think is the honest answer. I think sort of from my perspective, obviously we're at this point in the league where we don't know what's going to happen still. So we don't know if they're going to end the season now or we're going to play it out a little bit later down the line. So what are your thoughts around how this is going to play out and what's that impact for the transfer market?
I think we're in quite a lucky position, I think, in terms of if they end the season early, they don't complete the fixtures, then they'll either do something along the lines of who finished in the top 4 last year, there's your teams going into Europe, or they'll say, where are you currently in the league table? There's your teams for Europe. Either way, we're in the Champions League, so I think if the season ends early, fine. That works for us. If we somehow manage to get these games played, because remember, we're mid-May, and you're going to have a little mini pre-season before the players can actually have a game. So say 3 weeks. I think they're having some meetings next week. So they announce it. So next Monday they go into training. You're looking probably early to mid-June before they can even think about playing any games. And what have we got, like 11 fixtures left of the season?
Yeah.
To try and fit all that in, that's going to be tough.
The thing is, no matter what, this is going to have an impact for the next couple of seasons. It's not just going to be a hangover.
Unless they cut the season short now.
Yeah. And you've got, no matter what, you've got the Euros next season. You've got Qatar coming up, which is going to play sort of havoc with the schedule going forward. It's all things that you go, this is going to have repercussions going forward. Like you think around, it's not necessarily us sort of here and now, but the parachute payments for some of the relegation clubs is going to be impacted. If you look at some of the models being proposed to bring clubs up and then not necessarily relegating and then having 6 in relegation next season, you can't have £100 million per club as a parachute payment. So it becomes even more important to stay in the Premier League rather than go up and go straight back down again. It's going to change.
Clubs might end up spending beyond their means to do that as well. Like if you're a club like Villa or Brighton, the teams that are fighting for relegation, you're going to be like, well, money-wise, we're going to really struggle if we get relegated. Like we're going to have real problems. So we need to go out and spend 100, 200 million on players to make sure we don't get relegated. And what we kind of thought this whole situation where it might have fixed the problem of transfer fees being too high, it's going to do the complete opposite, I think, and push things up. So they need to make sure they've got a really good plan in place that is going to protect everyone involved.
And equally, it's one of those ones where sort of I saw something on, and I'm just got it up on my other screen here, the stuff that we had that Sky Sports as a potential one is relegation candidates if points per game decided the table. Which for us, to be honest, is not a bad thing because I think
still in fourth. I think
still in fourth. I think sort of it doesn't really affect the top 5. It would.
I think most positions are pretty much the same. If I remember rightly.
It pretty much keeps it. It only really does it in the middle table. So the Europa League places, Sheffield United go up, Arsenal go up, and Wolves and Tottenham go down. Is the only place. I don't think that's
a shame.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with seeing Tottenham going down anyway.
The only thing that for me, no matter what's going to happen, there's going to be litigations with the FA. No one's going to be happy if it's not completed in the way it is, because there's money affected. If it gets finished now, clubs are going to have to pay back sponsors. They're going to have to pay back all this sort of money that they'd already banked. They'd already started to almost spend on players they haven't got yet.
Absolutely.
And then equally, it's sort of into next season. I personally don't think we're going to see a football game played with fans to the levels we've seen until at least December time. So
Yeah,
you
potentially
think
into 2021.
you think around that. I mean, sort of the revenues we get from those sorts of is not insignificant. I think sort of for some of the smaller clubs, it's big, especially in the lower leagues. But that's going to have an impact on people's abilities to spend and spending outside their means, because you can't pay for hospitality or all the sort of the rigmarole around that. And I don't know if you saw some of the Bundesliga yesterday. It was weird. It was when you could hear players and that players sort of shouting for a ball reverberated around the stadium. It felt like going back to Power League.
It felt like every now and then you'd go flick through Sky Sports and some random amateur sport would pop up and you just leave it on for a little while. There was like 2 fans in the crowd and not really much entertainment. It was just the sport. And that's kind of how it felt when because I switched on for about 20 minutes of the Dortmund game and just had a little watch of that. And it didn't feel like football. It felt like, as you said, like a five-a-side game or if you ever watched the old, what was it called, with the Legends.
Yeah, if you think around it, especially, I mean, I was watching the Schalke thing, and you think around that sort of game traditionally, that's a sort of rivalry, sort of big game. The atmosphere, especially it being Bundesliga, would have been immense. You would have felt the fans almost being there. And I hate the cliche, but that 13th man idea of having all of the fans there, it's going to make an impact, especially for clubs that get high attendances, that get that sort of fans involved. That's going to be a big loss. So it's going to change how we go into next season. And I mean, sort of, we're in a good place, I think, is the honest answer. We've got 4th. I don't think people can take that away from us. And even if we go back and play, I don't know what our run of games were, but I can't see us dropping too many points.
I think we've still got City and Liverpool left. And I think that was it out in terms of rivals. I think we might have Leicester and Wolves as well. So we've still got some tough games there.
Still some tough games. I think sort of, I mean, as much as I'm loving it at the moment, that Liverpool might they're never going to be able to claim the league as much as sort of...
In front of their own fans at the very least, they definitely won't be able to.
And it's going to be weird. For them, it's sort of taking the foot off the pedal for winning that league. City, I don't think they've got nothing to play for because they can't catch up with Liverpool, and they've got nothing to lose because Leicester and Chelsea aren't really going to be sort of challenging for that. Obviously, Leicester want to maintain that 3rd position, rightly so. They've played well. Credit where credit's due. But I think sort of I'm not concerned if we have to go and play out our last couple of games. As you quite rightly said, I don't think even if we dropped into 5th place,
still a successful season, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the only thing that I'd hate for that is Man United going above us. That's something I don't want to see. Not necessarily. I don't think that would be a detriment to Chelsea's season. I just don't like United being smug because they can be right wankers when they are.
So just to kind of wrap things up for today, I have one more question for you, which is who is your player of the season so far? If it was to end today, who would you say he was Chelsea's player of the season?
For me, I think I can only see one option, and that's Mason Mount. For me, he had absolutely unbelievable season. No one expected it. He plays some midfielders off the park, and I feel like we've got a really good talent in him coming forward. So for me, that'd be mine. And yourself?
I think I would have to say mine would be Kovacic. I think Kovacic this season has been absolutely superb. considering, he's challenging for places with Jorginho and Kante. And last season he was good, but he wasn't quite there. But this season he's bossed the midfield in so many games. I just think back to some of the Champions League games where he just controlled the midfield and everything went through him, which, usually you'd expect that to be Jorginho. That's his role. But Kovacic, his passing has been exceptional. Every time he had the ball, he would have a positive move. He would always go forward. He'd create really good chances. And it's a shame that I'm not saying one of the young players, because they've all been brilliant considering their first season in the league and everything. But I think Kovacic has been just that good that I couldn't pick. I'd like to. I would have wanted to pick one of the youngsters, but I think for me, Kovacic has just been super.
He has, and it was one of those ones where he was hit and miss last season. He's a very competitive part of the field, and he's brought something different. There's no one's sort of taken away what Kante can do. Jorginho stepped up the mark. I think sort of I'm going to sort of call out my move of the season. It's his sort of absolute wonder assist into Tammy for against Watford. But Kovacic has just brought that different dynamic, and I think sort of it's going to be really competitive against those three because they play a very similar role, which is brilliant. And as you say, nothing taken away from some of the youngsters there.
That midfield next season is going to be very difficult, I think, to handle, because you add in there Barkley, which he stays. He's not the best out of those options, but he's still going to be competing for a place. Loftus-Cheek coming back in, that's going to be... And then even Ziyech, he can play in the centre of the park as well. So you're going to have so many options there. And we're still being linked with midfielders in the transfer market. And I'm just thinking we don't need any more unless someone leaves. But other than that, I would not bring in any new central midfielders for sure.
The only one I can see leaving is Jorginho, simply because he is that. He's got such a relationship with sort of going back to Italy, Sarri at Juve. I don't know how he would fit into a Juve's team, but I think that's the only person who could come in and buy him.
I've seen a few links over the past few days of a swap deal for Jorginho and Pjanic.
I would take that.
I think kind of a like for like. Obviously, Jorginho loves working with Sarri, but it's an interesting one to keep an eye on. I think Pjanic maybe wouldn't get into that team though. With all those other players, competing for places, I think I'd go for Ruben ahead of him.
Ruben is sort of, I think we were talking around the game we went to see him with, and I think he is just a beast in that midfield. You've got Kovacic, who is, I think, elegantly defensive. Kante is that workhorse that I've never seen in a player in my whole life, and I'm so glad we've got him. And I think Ruben just brings that dynamic of strength and then an absolute powerhouse. Sort of that. He reminds me of a younger Yaya Toure, that box-to-box midfielder that players just bounce off as he sort of glides his way through. That's where I'm looking forward to having him back.
Cool. Right. Well, I think we should wrap it up there. So thank you very much to everyone who's watched today. And
please like and subscribe.
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
ChelsChat! ChelsChat! ChelsChat!